Aloha, my name is Scott Lepena, and I'm the supervisor of the Elder Abuse Unit at the Prosecutor's Office. And today I want to talk to you about my father-in-law, James Cam. About 13 years ago, my father-in-law, Jimmy, as he's known to a lot of people, suffered a major stroke. We're talking about full paralysis right side of his body. What ended up happening is that my family, my wife, my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law, my daughter, all instantly became caregivers. And we learned a lot through this process of how to become a caregiver and what to do and what not to do when hiring a caregiver. Now, my mother-in-law, for lack of a better term, she's pake. In order to hire a qualified caregiver, we're looking at somebody that is trained, someone that's bonded, and oftentimes someone that's from an agency. In order to get somebody like that, you're looking at somebody that costs anywhere from $25 to $35 an hour to come into your home. When my mother-in-law found out about this, she said, no, I'm not going to pay that much. I'm going to go to Craigslist. Now, for those of you who don't know what Craigslist is, it's an online classified ad. If you want a stolen car, you go to Craigslist. If you want a hooker, you go to Craigslist. What my mother-in-law did is she wanted a caregiver cheap, so she went to Craigslist. So what happened is that one night my wife came home and said, oh my gosh, my mom, she found this great caregiver. This woman is a certified nurse. This woman's gonna open up her own health facility. This woman, she's a spiritual healer. This woman, she's a brain surgeon. This woman had all these great things that she told my wife and mother-in-law. And I said, wow, this lady sounds too good to be true. How much does she charge an hour? Only $10 an hour. And again, that's one of your signals about it being too good to be true. So what I did some research on this lady, and her scam was she'd go into a house, she would slip, she would fall, and she'd sue the homeowner. That's how close we came to almost being a victim of caregiver abuse. And today, that's what we're going to talk about. Now, again, I've been with the prosecutor's office now for 25 years, but my views and opinions are not that necessarily shared by the office. Basically, if I say something you disagree with, don't take it out on my boss. Now, caregiver abuse is a very big problem. With our senior population getting older and older, oftentimes, you're having them go from independency to dependency. And because of that, what will happen is that oftentimes families are going to say, you know what, we can't afford to put mom and dad into a care home. Let's try to do it ourselves. Let's try to do it cheap. Or let's put it into a care home that's maybe not licensed. Or let's put it into a care home that is overcrowded and they'll shuffle bodies around. And oftentimes that's what you'll see. You have this network of caregivers within their private homes, and what they'll do is they'll shuffle their patients around for inspection time. Because unfortunately, in order for the long-term care ombudsman to go into a house for a surprise inspection, they need to give 24 hours notice for this surprise inspection. Because the caregiver will say, hey, this is my private house. You just can't come walking in here whenever you want to. Lately, what we've been having is a lot of people renting homes, but not calling them care homes. They'll rent a house and then they'll bring in an independent contractor caregiver to come into the house. That way they avoid the regulations of opening up a care home, and they'll just say, no, I'm just renting a room from out of my house like that. And then separately, it just so happens my daughter's a CNA or wants to be a CNA one day. And so this lady is also paying my daughter as an independent contractor. So we are seeing oftentimes caregiver abuse, but not in care homes, but in places purporting to be care homes. Like all elder abuse crimes, oftentimes this crime is not reported. And why isn't it reported? Because what will happen is that you have seniors basically being dropped off. Seniors being dropped off at emergency rooms, saying, oh, she didn't seem so good. And then they'll be dropped off at emergency rooms. And then what will happen is that the doctors will say, well, she's malnourished, she has bed sores, she has all these conditions like this with maltreatment. And who's to blame? We don't know. She's just dropped off at the emergency room. We don't know, we don't know. And the police oftentimes don't get involved in these cases because the primary thing with emergency room technicians is to save lives, not necessarily make police reports. Even though they're mandated reporters, oftentimes these cases don't get reported to the police. Now, what is caregiver abuse? Basically, it can happen in any form that the caregiver sees fit, and that you have a caregiver, I'm going to use the term caregiver loosely here, they can physically abuse somebody. And oftentimes this physical abuse may not be punches or hits or cuts or scratches, but it might be over medication. Basically, what you can see is caregivers or care facilities, in order to keep problem patients compliant, they'll over-medicate the patients and keep them knocked out. Keep them knocked out. We've had many, many stories of what would happen is if you go into a care facility and at the beginning of the shift, the CNAs would over-medicate all the patients. That way, during that whole shift, the patients would be sleeping. A sleeping patient is a patient you don't have to worry about. With my father-in-law, he had to go into a care facility for a little bit. And because of my job, I would go in there every day. We'd take rotations. We'd go to the care home. I'd go in one night, my wife would go in one night, my mother-in-law would go in one night, my brother-in-law would go in another night. So every day we were checking. And coincidentally enough, when we went in there every day to check on my father-in-law, guess what would happen? The CNA, the certified nurse's assistant, would jump from behind the desk, follow us into the room, saying, oh yeah, your father-in-law, he's so good, fluff up his pillow, give him attention and everything, make sure, check his fluids, check his pulse, all these things like that, to put on this big show in front of us like that. Yet we had noticed across this hall, no one went into there. I talked to my family and said, did you ever see a CNA or any of the employees go into those, check out those patients? No, they only checked out our patients when we went. So if you have family, if you have friends in a nursing facility, visit often. Visit often. Visit often. Because the more you visit, you're telling the employees of these facilities that you're watching them. You can see how your dad is doing. You can see how your mom is doing. So please, if you have somebody that you care about in these facilities, visit often. Now, caregiver neglect is huge, basically, in that you, as a caregiver, fail to give them the care that they need, fail to roll them over, fail to change their diapers, fail to feed them, fail to medicate them, fail to take them to the hospital when needed, fail to take them to their medical appointments when needed. And being a caregiver is extremely taxing. Being a caregiver is extremely stressful. Being a caregiver is oftentimes extremely lonely. And I've seen repeatedly how families who have a person in their family suddenly needing caregiving, whether it be the adult, whether it be the father or the mother that suddenly has a stroke, and all of a sudden all the adult children are saying, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, maybe Sissy. Sissy doesn't have a good job. She can quit her job and she can care for mom and dad. We'll let Sissy take care of everything. We'll let Sissy take care of everything. Then what happens is that Sissy gets overworked. Sissy has what's called caregiver stress. Sissy can't manage. Sissy is not trained to do all these things. Sissy doesn't get help from the other siblings, because the other siblings will think, whew, I'm glad I'm not Sissy. I'm glad that I don't have to take that responsibility, take care of mom, take care of dad, because dad, he's so frustrating. I mean, he forgets all these things. He can't hear, so you constantly have to yell at him. And he won't listen because he thinks he's all that. Again, being a caregiver is very stressful, and they need all the help they can get. Okay, signs of caregiver abuse. Okay. As a care provider, you have certain responsibilities. And one of the responsibilities is to make sure that your patient or your relative who you're caring for gets to all their appointments like that. And as an adult child, when you see that mom and dad aren't making their appointments, or the mom and dad's doctors are calling you saying, how come your dad didn't make his appointment? That could be a sign that the caregiver hired is not taking them there. Go through their mail. As an adult child with somebody dependent, it's incumbent upon you to make sure that things are getting paid. And when we see all these unpaid things, it's like, Dad, I thought you had everything on automatic. Oh, I do have everything on automatic payments like that. Well, but then how come these aren't getting paid? Oh, well, the bank says that, or the caregiver told me that the bank made a mistake. The caregiver told me the bank made a mistake. Upon looking, I've had adult children find out that they were taking money from the patient's account. And then the money would not be there to pay for the services needed for the adult parent. I had this happen to a retired police lieutenant, I want to say, major or lieutenant, who basically had a caregiver. He suffered an accident. He couldn't take care of things. He had a caregiver, and that caregiver stole from this retired police officer. Again, caregivers, they don't think they're going to get caught. And oftentimes they see it over and over again that once they do get caught, the damage is already done. They've already spent the money, and it's aloha to the money, it's aloha to independence oftentimes for caregivers. And this is very difficult to recover from that if you're a senior. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about this young lady right here, Raquel Bermisa. What Miss Bermisa did is she ran a care home. She didn't run it very well, and one of her patients died. She was subsequently convicted of manslaughter. That's how bad her abuse was towards one of her patients there. She didn't feed him, she didn't give him proper medication, she didn't give him proper care, and he died. It's a crime to ignore your responsibilities as a caregiver. Miss Lepena, here's what Miss Lepena did. We have a woman who had a husband that was disabled. The husband could not leave the bedroom area. And so the woman, the wife, hired an agency and said, okay, I need someone to come while I do some shopping. While I do go out and play bridge, get my hair done, do some shopping. I need a little bit of a break to care for my husband. Understandable. So she goes to this reputable agency. This reputable agency, in the course of 1 month, sent 8 different caregivers into the house. Then one day, the wife realized that all her jewelry was missing. She kept the jewelry hidden in the living room. And so she called the police. And the police did a fantastic job of determining which of these 8 caregivers that this agency sent over did it. And what Ms. Lepena did is she confessed that she did take the money, that she did take the jewelry, and she was convicted of the crime of theft. So even if you don't do the Craigslist cheap route, but you do hire an agency to do it, the agency can only do so much. The agency basically can't guarantee that they're not hiring criminals. That's just the reality of the situation here. And they may be bonded. They may have in their policies that our CNAs, our employees, are told not to accept any gifts of over $20 from their patients. Oftentimes that's ignored because you have a senior being cared for by somebody they really like. And then that somebody that they really like has a hardship. Like, oh, I'm about to be evicted because of my abusive boyfriend. Oh, my car broke down, I need help. Well, here, honey, let me give you $1,000. Let me give you $1,000. Let me give you $1,000. They're going to ignore that piece of paper at the beginning saying, oh, you can't give our employees gifts over $20. And it happens over and over and over again. I had this one adult daughter, basically what she called me up saying, Scott, it would be easier and cheaper for me to take my dad to a hostess bar and have him pay a hostess for company than for this one caregiver to come over and visit him every day. Because every time this caregiver comes to the house, she always gets money from my dad. She always has a sob story from my dad. And my dad just gives her money, and I can't stop it. And he says, not a crime, it's my money. I can do whatever I want to, but this caregiver was totally taking advantage of the dad. Now with respect to care homes, people have to inspect these care homes. People have to go online and make sure that these care homes are insured, are regulated, and see when the last visit was done on these care homes and see what the score is. Every legitimate care facility in the state of Hawaii has a score. How many violations they have, when it was resolved. In fact, just 2 years ago, there was an audit done by the City and County Auditor's Office about different care homes and what they've done. And basically, you go into these places like that and say, how in the heck did they pass the audit? How in the heck did they pass this? And here's the frightening thing. You have what's called the long-term care ombudsman, whose job is to visit the care homes. He used to do it twice a year, all these care homes. Guess how many of them there are in the state of Hawaii? There's one. There's one long-term care ombudsman, and he has a couple of assistants that are part-time. Guess how many care facilities he has to visit? Over 1,300, okay, in the state of Hawaii. Now you do the math. He used to do those twice a year. And I'm not talking about just on Oahu, I'm talking about all the neighbor islands as well. So it's easy to get away with bad treatment, unfortunately, in the state of Hawaii. So that's why it's incumbent upon the family to do their own follow-up, to do their own research as well. Now, when making these inspections, what you have to look for is everyday things. Basically, you have to say, would I want to stay in here? It's almost like going to a hotel. It's like, do you want to sleep on dirty sheets? Do you want a place to be smelly? Do you want something to do this? What standards do you have in staying at a hotel? These are basically the standards that you're going to have for your mom and dad when you visit these places as well. Now what we have here is a case study of Mark Genetiano. He was a CNA, a Certified Nurse's Assistant, at one of the 4-star facilities here. And when I say 4-star, I'm talking about you need at least $100,000 to get in to this place. And they don't play bingo, they have French club. I mean, their guest speakers are politicians. I mean, they have a fountain in the foyer. They don't have like a front porch, they have a foyer. I mean, this is a fancy schmancy place. And when I did this case, when this case went to court, I discovered a couple things. In order to make money, oftentimes what will happen is that 90% of the work done in these fancy schmancy places are done by CNAs. Now you might be saying, well, isn't a CNA like a doctor? Well, a CNA, all you have to do is go to community college and spend 12 weeks there. And then all of a sudden, bang, you get this title, CNA. So imagine 90% of the work done at certain healthcare facilities are done by people that did not fail out of a CNA class after 3 months. 90%. And oftentimes these kids are younger. And I say kids, these are in their late teens, early 20s, doing the grunt work, doing the majority of work at these places. Because why? They're cheap to employ, and therefore you got the profit margin going up. What Mark Genetiano did is that he would go around and he sexually molested seniors. He would basically fondle their breast, touch them inappropriately, and he would laugh about it. And he focused on patients that had mental illness or patients that had severe dementia or severe Alzheimer's, because those make the best victims. We've had more and more cases of sexual assault happening in care homes, because if you're a sexual predator, the best victim is the victim that doesn't understand what's going on. Or the best victim is the victim that will not be believed, or has memory issues and will not remember the attack after it happened. The only way we were able to catch Mr. Genetiano was that he did it in front of a couple of other employees. Now, I wish I could say that the employees immediately contacted the police in this case, but they did not. Because Mr. Genetiano was a funny guy. He was the life of the party. He was one of these individuals that did all the parties after work, and so everybody liked him like that. So he had a couple of employees witnessing these atrocities, but still did not want to come forward, because they didn't want to be labeled as the nerd or the outsider or the person getting in trouble. Finally, we had a couple of people brave enough to report it, and then the house of cards fell down, and Mr. Genetiano went to jail. He was sentenced to prison and then he was deported. Now, we have another case study of Mildred Namora, and basically she assaulted another resident. Again, it goes down to oftentimes people don't understand what goes on in these care facilities. And you do have the popular residents and the unpopular residents. It's just like a high school. Teachers like the popular students, they don't like the unpopular students. Let's say you have a patient that's all grumbly all the time like that. They're gonna side with the compliant patients as well. So in a lot of conflicts that happen in care homes, oftentimes the popular residents, popular patients can get away with a lot of things and accuse the unpopular patients. We see these stories happening, replaying all the time in care facilities, That's why I encourage anybody that has anybody that they care about to visit these care facilities often, to know the dynamics, to see where your mom goes during her break time, see who she hangs out with during her break time. Why is mom sitting in that corner all by herself when these 4 other women are at the cool kids table like that? The same dynamics that you see in high school, you see in care facilities as well. I can go on and on about how caregivers take their responsibilities and don't take them seriously. And they do it because they're either A, lazy, or they're trying to make a quick buck. And it's very difficult to prove oftentimes caregiver abuse in care facilities, because you have these caregivers that are running a business. You have these caregivers trying to maximize the bottom line. You have these caregivers that run these facilities, and I realize I'm painting a broad stroke and putting them all as criminals, but in my 25 years as a prosecutor, that's all I see as criminals. And granted, I have not seen all the caregivers. I'm sure there's a lot of good ones here, but the ones I encounter are garbage because I encounter them in the criminal justice system. One tool that caregivers use is what's called a power of attorney. What a power of attorney is a legal permission slip. You basically share your legal rights with another individual through a piece of paper. That's what this woman did here. She's a caregiver of a senior in Kaimaki. She was first a neighbor, then a quote-unquote friend, and then a caregiver to her, to the victim. She convinced the victim to sign what's called a power of attorney. And then with that power of attorney, what the caregiver did, what the defendant did, the suspect did, the criminal did in this case, was she sold the woman's house out from under her. And we see this happen over and over and over again. That's why we always caution people not to do power of attorneys, because it can have devastating results. Okay. And in this case here, what Miss Susan Chun did was she went to jail afterwards. She was found guilty of theft. Now, most of our abuse happens as financial abuse. And when I say financial abuse, I'm talking about cashing checks without permission, forging signatures, improper use of power of attorneys, and scams and deceits to obtain assets. Now imagine, in looking at this list of financial abuse crimes, imagine the perpetrator being a caregiver. Could a caregiver do these crimes? Could a caregiver cash a check without permission? Yes. Could a caregiver forge signatures? Yes. We see that all the time. Could a caregiver convince their patient to sign a power of attorney? Oh, Auntie, I know you want me to drive you to places like that, but you know what? If we get into an accident, you can get sued for a lot of money. So how about if you sign the car over to me? So that way, if we get into an accident, they'll just sue me and not you. Okay, Auntie? Or Auntie, you know what? I don't want, for tax purposes, you to get dinged. So what if we share the title of this house together? So that way, it's 2 people, so you'd file jointly. And so that saves money that way. So put me on the deed as well. So again, with these absurd things, caregivers can go ahead and entrench themselves into it. And what I'll see happen is that I'll have adult children calling me up saying, Scott, this caregiver is in the will. Scott, this caregiver has a power of attorney. Scott, this caregiver is living with my mom and dad now. And this is ridiculous. And so I said, okay, when did you find out about it? I just found out about it now. Okay, when was the last time you talked to mom? Well, I talked to her last year sometime. I think for her birthday I talked to her. So from her birthday to now, you didn't have any communication? No. And I don't want to blame the adult child for ignoring their parents and saying, well, you kind of deserve this. And you only seem to be caring about this because this involves your inheritance. I'm not going to say that. But it's indicative of the fact that you need to always stay in constant contact with your kapuna. If you have a senior in your life, you need to stay in contact with them. And I mean, I can tell you stories that are outrageous about how adult children found out that their parents had married a bar girl because they just happened to go through mom and dad's bills and say, Dad, why are you paying for this condo? You don't own a condo. Oh, that's my wife. I met her and I'm married to her. And so, I mean, and these are true stories and we see this happening all the time. Anyways, that sidetrack. Okay, we're not going to do any more case studies because basically you understand the severity of the crimes, but it is a crime, definitely. And you can go to jail for a very long time. If you are a caregiver, if you have the responsibility and the duty to care for other people. And we have cases and cases and cases of where people have been caught for caregiver abuse and have gone to prison. Okay. There's criminal statutes for mandated reporters. If you work in one of these care facilities, if you are a bank person that sees these crimes going on, if you are a doctor or a clinician or a nurse or anybody that works in the ER and you see these crimes going on, you are mandated, required by law, to contact the authorities of suspected elder abuse. Don't worry if you make a mistake. If you report a crime or if you think that elder abuse is going on and you're afraid to embarrass somebody, you're afraid you'll get in trouble, don't worry, you are civilly covered. If you make a good faith attempt to report a crime going on and the police investigate the crime and they figure, nah, that's not a crime going on, you're not going to get in trouble because what you did was a good faith effort to report a crime. So you are covered civilly under that. So again, if you see crime going on, please report it. And again, these are the do's and don'ts of if you're a caregiver. And there's a lot more don'ts than do's. Basically, the do is do your job. The don'ts are don't accept gifts. Don't assume anything about anything. Don't take the place of the spouse. Don't take the place of the adult child. Don't do anything that you would not want someone to do to your parents. Because you are going to be accountable for your actions. It's hard to hide financial exploitation, especially by caregivers. You are going to get caught. So don't assume you're not going to. Thank you very much.